So our mutual friend and probably journalistic hero, Lee Stranahan, in addition to saving us from the media and their Russia hoax nonsense, he's also telling us something about crime in America, and specifically the way that the media doesn't talk about some of the most important aspects of crime, which is that black crime is completely out of proportion with their population, and about how that cuts across not just black on black crime but also black on white crime. So Lee is using the, let's see here, the Criminal Victimization in the United States Survey, 2008 edition, compiled in 2011, I think. This comes from the Bureau of Justice Statistics, and he's drawing our attention to some cells in this table that show rape and sexual assault, not only white on white and black on black, but also black on white and white on black. Now, the most interesting thing about these cells is that 16% of the, 16% of the white victims of sexual assault and rape, those crimes were committed by a black person. But if we look at the corresponding cell on the diagonal, black victims of rape and sexual assault, there are 0, according to the table, that are committed by whites. So, the most important thing to understand about this table is that it is not a, it doesn't describe population statistics. This is a sample. So there are asterisks next to the two cells that are black on white and white on black crime. If you scroll down to the bottom of the table, you'll see that the asterisk means that estimate is based on 10 or fewer sample cases. So when they were compiling this table, they didn't look at all crime in the entire United States. They pulled a random selection of crime cases and then they looked into them to find out the race of the offender and of the victim. So that's why you see 0.0 for white on black rape, because when they pulled their cases, they got none. They came up with 0 of them in the random selection that they got. It doesn't mean that none occurred in that year. It just means there were none in that sample. Correspondingly, for the black on white rapes and sexual assaults, it says 16.4%, but there's an asterisk. That doesn't mean that, what it means is that in the cases they pulled, they got 16.4%, but it's still less than 10, okay? So the takeaway from here is to understand that not that there were no cases in which a white person raped a black. There were some, but in a random sample, they got 0. What this does tell you is that it is very, very rare compared to the other side, compared to the converse. So where we're going to go now is we're going to pursue this deeper with some more data from the supplementary homicide report from the FBI, and I am going to try to sicken you to your stomach with the truth. If it doesn't work, you must be a jaded bastard. But anyhow, we're going to go down that road. I'm going to show you how to do it. And at the end, I hope that you'll respond and tell me what you think. So we're not going to be able to dig any deeper into this issue with the data from the Bureau of Justice Statistics. What we're going to use instead is the FBI's supplementary homicide data. That's what I used last time, and if you want, you can go watch my previous video to see how that data works and where you can get it. We're going to be specifically looking at murders of women because I think that's the closest thing to looking into rape and sexual assault. So we're going to load the data that we were using last time, but that we're going to restrict it to the year of 2008 to make it as comparable as we can to what Lee was doing. So I'm going to load the data, and then we're going to look specifically for black females killed by white males and white females killed by black males. So this says 167 white females were killed by black males in 2008. Here we have 43 black females killed by white males. So the easiest thing to do and the most straightforward thing to do is just to compare these two numbers. You take 167, you put it over 43, and that gives you a ratio of 3.9 or 4 to 1. So there are 4 white women killed by black men for every 1 black woman killed by a white man. But that's not the end of the story, right? We know that these populations differ in size. So our second option, rather than just looking at the raw numbers, is to use per capita, or rate. Since we know that the black population is smaller than the white population, we need to take that into account. How can we do that? Who can tell us how big those populations are? It's the U.S. Census. So we'll exit from here, and we'll go to the American Fact Finder. This is the U.S. Census data. We'll go to Advanced Search, and then here I typed in race, and this is one of the tables that I got for 2008. So this says that the total population in 2008 was 304 million, and that the white population, not including Hispanics, was 65.4%, and that the black population, not including Hispanics, is 12.1%. So now we have to do some basic arithmetic here, where we take this number, multiply it by this percentage, and this one, and then divide that by 2. So this is what we've done here. Total population of the United States, white population not Hispanic, and divided by 2. So there are about 99.5 million white non-Hispanic males in the United States in 2008. We do the same thing over here to find out about how many black males there are in the United States in 2008. There's about 18.5 million. So now we know how we can adjust those gynocide numbers to find out what is the population that's doing the killings. So let's go back to our slides. So 167 white women killed by black men. We know there's about 18.4 million black men, so in that year there were 9 white gynocides for every million black men. Now, for white men, there were only 43 black women killed, but there were 100 million white men. So for every million white men, there was less than half of 1 black woman killed. So that seems like a big difference. Now we could stop here. 9 versus 0.43. What we actually need to do is combine those two things. We need to combine option 1 and option 2. Black on white, 9 per million, to white on black, 0.43 per million gynocides. So that's going to give us more than 20 to 1. The difference between black men killing white women and white men killing black women is more than 20 to 1. And this isn't using the kind of data that only has a sample of less than 10 or fewer cases. We're talking about how many people here? We're talking about 14,000 cases. So now we're going to get further into the racial disparities and wrap this up on the worst note possible. There were 590 black women who were killed in 2008, and for every 1 million black men, 32 of those murders can be attributed to black people, and 9 white women, as we just saw, were killed for every 1 million black men. For whites, there were 12 white women who were murdered for every 1 million white men, and there was less than half of a gynocide for every 1 million white men in terms of black women. So what we're going to do is we're going to put 32 over 9 and 12 over 0.43, and that's going to give us the relative numbers. So for blacks, there were about 3.5 black women that were killed for every white woman that was killed by black men. For white men, it's a completely different story. There were 28 dead white women killed by white men for every black woman that was killed by a white man. So what this means is that white men are killing almost exclusively within their own race. whereas for black men who kill women, a little bit more than 3/4 are black, and then the rest are white. This is a huge racial disparity. It's absolutely huge. So what does all this depressing stuff mean? It means, for one, that the table that Lee showed us was not wrong. Even though it was based on a sample, and even though that sample had less than 10 cases in the categories that we might be interested in, that table was not wrong. There are extremely serious problems with black crime, one of which is its proportion, its scale. Blacks are committing way more crime than any other group in the population, and rather than what the media would tell you, it is whites who suffer disproportionately from crime that goes across racial lines. This is not to say that blacks suffer less than whites from black crime. They don't. Blacks suffer the most from black crime. But people like Black Lives Matter are totally, completely, and utterly intellectually and morally bankrupt. If anybody suffers more from interracial crime, it is whites at the hands of blacks. Lee gave you one example, and I'm pretty sure that I just proved it to you with the homicide data. So that's about it. If you have any comments, please let me know, and thank you for your time. I'm sorry this is so depressing, but if we're ever going to fix anything that has to do with this problem, we're going to have to come to grips with this stuff. And that's part of why the liberals, despite the liberals and the progressives, despite how many of them genuinely care for black people and want them to do better, their complete and utter inability over the last 40 years to come to grips with these statistics and recognize the truth have prevented them from making any lasting changes. So in order to do that, we've got to understand the truth first. We've got to do it. So anyhow, this is my attempt to hopefully move us a little bit closer to that. So thank you.